So, I am on my school's rowing team. On the rowing team, you row with 5 other rowers and a coxswain. You row on rivers, you row on lakes, you row in the bay, lots of places, just not on land. We have a fun time here on the rowing team. I remember we went to practice one time and someone had hooked their phone up to the Bluetooth speakers and was blasting Ocean Man at full volume while we drove through town. But I'm not going to tell you about that. What I'm going to tell you about is our race in Massachusetts. So, the race is on a Saturday, but we have the Friday before it off from school, and because of this, the coaches think that this will make a good opportunity to take us into Boston. So on Friday, we're going to carpool to the race, and so we set off in cars around 7 a.m. After about 2 hours of driving, we get off the interstate and stop at a rest stop. Inside, they have a few different stores, and one of them makes breakfasts, but they also sell little treats next to the checkout. One such treat is a cookie sandwich shaped like Cookie Monster. It is 2 chocolate chip cookies with a lot of frosting between them, an Oreo for a mouth, some more frosting for its eyes, and some blue frosting on top for Cookie Monster's fur. We got a great photo of me first biting into it, but it had way too much sugar in it for me to eat the whole thing. After trying to eat it in its complete form, I decided to take it apart. I took off the top cookie, removed all the frosting, and ate it, but there was still a lot of frosting on it, so I couldn't eat the rest of it. So I put all the frosting in a bag and ate the other cookie. Now, after eating the 2 cookies, all that was left of the Cookie Monster sandwich was about a cup of leftover frosting, which I had in a bag. We were already back in the car, so I couldn't throw out the bag, so I just kept it. After a couple more hours of driving, we were in Hull, Massachusetts, at the mouth of the Ware River. We were taking a ferry into Boston and leaving the cars here in Hull. While we were waiting for the ferry, we had fun pelting the bag of frosting at each other, and I think I permanently stained another rower's jacket with frosting. Soon the ferry arrived and we went to Boston. Once in Boston, we split up into small groups and my group went to Quincy Market. We walked around, went to the kiosks, one of which was a hat stand. Some of their hats were okay, but most of them were extremely tacky. My friend, who brought along a ton of money, bought all the tacky hats, and I got one that I personally thought was the tackiest. It has a floral design on it, and it says, "Boy," right across the front of it in large plastic sequins. So we walked around Quincy Market, made some more purchases similar to that. We also bought a bunch of tacky sunglasses and a horse mask. We walked around Boston some more, ate lunch, wearing our tacky clothing the whole time. After a few hours of trying on various combinations of hats and walking around, getting weird looks from other people, it was time to go back to the ferry. We got back on, had a fun time tying everyone's shoelaces together so that none of us could walk anywhere without dragging everyone else. But we barely got ourselves untied from each other in time to get off the ferry. We got back in the cars and drove over to the church where we were staying overnight. We did this because they let us sleep there for free. In the morning, we went down to some docks about 1.5 miles downstream of the start of the race. We launched the boats here because the start of the race is not very accessible to the trailers we had the boats on. So we pretty much had to row 1.5 miles just to get to the start of the race. We had 3 crews, a novice crew, an intermediate crew, and an advanced crew. After getting each crew's boats in the water, we set off. All was well and good until we got to the start of the race. As my crew's boat, the intermediate boat, was being pulled back onto land, we noticed that the novice crew, while waiting, had gotten too close to the dam. Now, the dam is really quite short, about 10 to 15 feet tall. However, because of hydrodynamics or something, the water close to the dam is being pulled underneath it. Our novice crew, while waiting to get out of the water, must have gotten too close to the dam and was now being sucked up against the side of the dam due to the current. They had to lower a ladder down from the top of the dam to get everyone out of the boat. Eventually, they got the boat unstuck and the crew got to race in it. The way the race worked was you started right after the dam and you rowed about 1.5 miles downriver into the bay. Then you rowed across the mouth of the bay for another 4 miles until you got to the mouth of the bay, where it met the Atlantic Ocean. The whole race overall was 5.5 miles long. Because the river is so narrow, they were doing a staggered start, one boat launching at a time. The intermediate boat I was rowing in was number 40, and the novice cruise boat was number 46. When the race began, we waited for our turn to start, and then we began. We worked hard, but our stroke was quite short. We also had a very annoying extra paddle in the boat that had been laid lengthwise down the boat, and that kept banging into our legs every stroke. We did okay for the first mile or so. A couple boats passed us, but nothing too bad. But then, when we left the mouth of the river and went into the bay, our progress went way down. At that point, quite a few boats passed us, including the novice boat eventually. When they passed us, that seemed like the last straw. No one in the boat thought we could get a decent position in the race anymore. Not only were we tired and had 3.5 miles of rowing ahead of us, but we had now just been passed by a boat crew that was supposed to be significantly worse than us. So our coxswain, to help energize us, suggested that we sing. Just a little funny song or something to take our minds off of how tired we were. So he started singing Jingle Bells. It was nowhere near Christmas time, but it's a fun song to sing, so we sang it. All of us rowed across the water singing various Christmas songs. At one point we switched to 100 bottles of beer on the wall and got down to 69 bottles before we changed songs. Now we were quite close to the finish, and we decided that when we finished, we'd be singing Jingle Bells. So we rowed as hard as we could, jingling all the way into the dock. We did get last place, but it was fun singing. After loading up all the boats onto the trailers again, it was 5 p.m. and we got back into our cars to go back home. In the van, while we were driving, things had winded down by then and we were just listening to music with our headphones on. However, while we were driving, our driver noticed that there was something wrong with the car. It was making a weird noise, but he didn't know what was wrong with it. But when we stopped on the turnpike, that's when it hit. As we rolled into the toll booth, the moment the car stopped moving, the engine shut off. It wouldn't start, and we couldn't get it moving. After we paid the turnpike fare, we got out of the van and pushed it 100 feet down the interstate to a parking lot. After cooling the engine down and jump-starting the car, we got back in and kept going. We went for about another hour, but then trouble struck again. The engine was rattling, and then as we were going over a hill, we heard metal clanging and what sounded like rocks hitting against the bottom of the car, like when you go over a dirt road. The driver knew something had gone very wrong, and that we needed to pull over as soon as possible. We got off the interstate, and we pulled over onto the side of the road. After popping the hood, the driver looked inside to find out what had happened. You see, the thing that had gone wrong was this thing called the AC clutch. In a car engine, a serpentine belt is used to power a lot of things, with a motor making the belt turn and the belt running around a bunch of pulley wheels, which, when the pulley wheels spin, they power the component they're attached to. The AC clutch is one of those pulley wheels. What happened is the clutch fell apart inside the engine while we were driving and fell off. That's the metal clanging sound we heard. However, inside the AC clutch there are a bunch of ball bearings, and when the clutch broke, they fell out and flew out from under the car. That's the sound like rocks we heard on the bottom of the car. The reason why we couldn't drive the car anymore is because the AC clutch broke, and since it couldn't be put back in, the serpentine belt was now no longer taut. It was loose, and now nothing else could be powered by the serpentine belt. Some of the things powered by it are very important, such as power steering, power brakes, and most especially the engine cooling system. This meant that if we had kept driving, the engine would have overheated, and then we would have really been in trouble. So, unable to fix the car, and still at least 2 hours from home, we called our parents, and one of them agreed to come down and pick us up. It was around 8 p.m. when we called, however, they got delayed by construction, and arrived around 11 p.m. We loaded all our stuff in, piled into their car, and around 1:30 a.m. I was home. I went to bed immediately, and that concluded my rowing trip. Overall, I had a fun time and would certainly do it again. But that's the end of my story. Thanks for watching.